Hello, my name is Carol May Whittick, spiritual life coach and your host of Higher Energetic Resonance Inspirations. This week, I'm diving deep into the contrasting realms of shame and guilt. What are their distinct characteristics? How do they affect our lives? And how can we overcome? From Paul Ekman, the distinction between shame and guilt is very important, since these two emotions may tear a person in opposite directions. The wish to relieve guilt may motivate a confession, but the wish to avoid the humiliation of shame may prevent it. From Brené Brown, guilt is just as powerful, but its influence is positive, while shame is destructive. Shame erodes our courage and fuels disengagement. So guilt and shame are another pair of words that often get interchanged and have very subtle but distinctive differences between them. So what is the difference between guilt and shame? What is the impact they have on us? What kind of emotions do we experience? And then once we've actually taken stock that we're feeling either guilt or shame, how do we then move forward? Guilt is usually from something that we experience on our own. So it's usually a feeling that we've done or even had a thought of something and something that's wrong, and it's your sense that you are morally wrong on a situation or in a situation or in your thoughts or actions. Guilt is also our conscious. It's that niggling voice that reminds us about things where we're steering on and off. When we have remorse for our actions or our behaviours, when we're guilty, when we're feeling the guilt, it's not necessarily something that is affecting our core identity. And the thing about guilt is guilt will then prompt us to take on responsibility for our actions, to seek forgiveness, to make amends, and direct us to personal growth and making real positive changes in our life. When it comes to shame, shame is when we internalize guilt. And shame usually is requiring of other people, in that it's thinking about the real or imagined judgment of others for your errors. It's then affecting our sense of self, our self-esteem, our confidence even. We believe that we take it on to the extent that we believe that we are flawed, deeply flawed or unworthy, and it really affects our entire identity. And by that token, it then becomes something that's paralyzing. It can then lead us into self-isolation, low self-esteem, and even to an extreme then affect our mental health. Then there is this vicious cycle that we can enter into where we start to move through both guilt and shame. For instance, if we do something wrong, initially we're going to feel guilty about doing that thing wrong. We can't believe that we did it. We can't believe that happened, and all the things that happen around us realizing that we've made an error. So we have a choice then, and if we don't make any moves to correct that wrong, then we'll start to feel that guilt then descends into shame. And the shame then starts to affect our sense of self, as I said before. Now that we're in shame, we're now thinking about the judgment of others, and that's when it's hardest now, because if we don't feel strong enough to stand up to the judgment or the attack of others, rightly or wrongly, then it's less likely that we're feeling that we can be honest about what we've done. So then we start to lie and cover up what we've done, and then that creates more guilt, and then we do nothing about it, and that creates more shame. And then this cycle, you can see, is repeated over and over and over, and we descend into our own darkness of shame. So now that we're clear about the difference between guilt and shame, so guilt coming from our own conscious about how we're feeling, and if we're able to act on our guilty feelings, then we're able to alleviate that. If we don't act on it, and then it will fester and then descend into shame, because then we're thinking about what other people are thinking, we're not making any actions, we feel bad about it, and then we start to lie and cover up all the things that we've done. Because we've seen how deep the pain can be, the suffering that we can inflict upon ourselves, How can we rise up out of that? How can we overcome this? First, we need to face our wrongs. We need to really look at what it is that we've done with initially no judgment. Just look at the facts of what it is that we've created. Then we need to move forward and do our best to correct the errors that we've done. And that can be apologizing, that can be an action that we take that would reverse the damage or the mistake that we've done, if that's possible. Wherever the error is, how can we bring it back to set point, or how can we make up for it in the future and be available if it's hurt somebody else, that we make sure that we're not causing any more harm. Also, self-forgiveness. And this is probably the hardest part, because we're usually harder on ourselves than we are on anybody else. Firstly is knowing that we are not our errors. Know that you are not your errors. And oftentimes when our actions negatively impact others, we kind of call ourselves the thing, and often we make a mistake. We've made a mistake. We aren't a mistake. And it's differentiating between the two of those. It's for us to fully know whether we made those moves intentionally or not. And if we did make those moves intentionally, is then to go into deeper self-inquiry. If we knew that we were about to cause hurt to somebody, why were we okay with making the move that was then going to impact someone negatively? And that can be a range of different things. We can think of the lighter end of the spectrum that comes to mind for me is if somebody is hungry and they don't have any money and they go into a store and they take some goods, they will feel guilty for what they've done, and they knowingly did what they did, and yet they're aware that the reason that they did it was potentially to feed themselves, or even in other instances to feed their family, and it seemed like the only thing that they could do. So how could they overcome that? It would be to apologize and say to the person why they did that, understand that they caused them a loss by taking the goods and not compensating for what they'd done. So that can happen, but then in the more extreme ends of things, we have people who go out and commit crimes and just do not care. So there's a wide spectrum of people who make moves, who commit actions that they know will impact others. Some care, some do it out of a need, some do it out of greed. Or if we look at the opposite, if we made a hurt in error and we did something and not realizing that it was going to negatively impact someone, or someone would get hurt or lose as a result of our actions, our first and foremost action is to make an apology, is to communicate to that person and say that we're sorry for what we've done, is to forgive ourselves, and then to really examine why we had a blind spot around our own action. Is there something that we're not aware of that we do repeatedly that causes pain? Is there a habit or a behavior or a trait that's not serving us and most definitely not serving others? And look into how we're able to fix that. Is there something now that we can grow and change in order to make sure that we're not repeating that pattern in the future? And practices that we can bring towards that to help us through our growing and healing process when it comes to guilt and shame. We can write a letter or a journal entry to ourselves by offering ourselves acceptance, self-acceptance, offering ourselves love, offering ourselves compassion, offering ourselves understanding and forgiveness what we've allowed ourselves to be through, what we let ourselves do. And also check in with our negative self-talk around that. Instead of constantly reminding yourself about the mistake or how bad it was, put a stop to it, draw a line in the sand and go, okay, hands up, I made a mistake, I messed up, I'm going to do better next time. And then know that you're actively taking the moves to get better, and actively take the moves to get better. If it's in your belief system, meditating, thinking about releasing the pain and the hold of that on yourself, prayer, asking for forgiveness from a higher power, from a higher self, from the universe, or just allowing yourself to release the weight of the guilt and the shame that you're carrying around. If you're aware of it and you're taking stock and you're trying to move forward, you deserve to have that weight lifted off you. And to finish, gratitude. And it's hard to think of how it could be possible for there to be any space for gratitude in a situation like this, the guilt and the shame as a result of your own actions, whether intentional or unintentional. But we have to try and find gratitude in every corner, every aspect of our lives, because there is always a way, there's always a moment where we can see something that there is to be grateful for. And in this instance is, firstly, we're grateful, we have gratitude that we are self-aware enough to realise that we've made an error. We're self-aware enough to notice our actions as we move through the world. Many people do not have that awareness. And if we do get given forgiveness by others, have gratitude for their grace, that we are in a space and that we are around people that will allow us to make mistakes and won't hold us to judgment for the end of our days. So maybe if it's possible, then there's room for us to then rebuild those relationships and maybe even strengthen those relationships. And just honour yourself. Have gratitude that you're honouring yourself, that you're doing your best to be a better human. From Rumi, soul, if you want to learn secrets, your heart must forget about shame and dignity. You are God's lover, yet you worry what people are saying. And from Willard Galing, shame and guilt are noble emotions essential in the maintenance of civilized society and vital for the development of some of the most refined and elegant qualities of human potential. Thank you for being with me on another episode of Higher Energetic Resonance Inspirations. If you want to find out more about me, head over to my website. It's carolmaywhittick.com, carolmaywhittick.com. I still encourage you, if you have not yet, to take the free Embody Higher Energetic Resonance journey, 3 steps closer to becoming the woman of your dreams. In this week-long program, you get guided visualizations and journal prompts from me, and it's something that you can use not only for visualizing something you want to create in the future, it can also be about feeling into you moving through a tricky emotion such as guilt and shame. So the link to that is in the show notes. Also, the link to my spiritual life coaching is in the show notes as well. It's a great opportunity for me to guide you one-to-one over 12 weeks, helping to move you forward closer to what you want to achieve in this life. Find me on social media, Facebook, Carol May Whittick, Kazmic, Kazmick, on Instagram. Thank you for joining me. Have a great week. Thank you.